Guys, good Monday morning. I'm Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk with Keith Smith here on the I Love CVille Network. We're presented by Keller Williams Alliance, and it's a glorious Monday. Is this the last Monday in May? Second to last Monday in May. The next Monday
is Memorial Day.
Yes.
The traditional Memorial Day.
Traditional
was
Memorial
always
Day.
May 30th.
That's right.
Oh,
So
yes.
we're learning already, and I haven't introduced our guests yet.
And hence the title is Lessons from the Legend. We just got a lesson.
We're going to learn so much. Judah Wickhauer, our director of the show, is presented by Keller Williams Alliance. Trusted name in the game, guys, is Keller Williams Alliance. Judah, let's welcome our guests, and let's welcome Keith Smith, Nikki Chambliss, and the legend Arlene Yobs to the show, who's teaching us about Memorial Day.
Oh.
Arlene, your second time on the network. How are you?
Yes, I am fine, and I'm really excited to be here and to share the mic with all of you this morning. And I will say, just in case, I have a little help with that May 30th date. My oldest son was born on May 30th.
Oh, okay.
And that was
Yes.
back in the day when Memorial Day was always on May 30th. so that's how I knew that.
trying to
What,
do
the
some-
last weekend of the month
Yeah.
every year?
I'm trying to do a little bit of math.
What's the math you're
okay.
trying to do?
How old your son is?
Oh,
I was
well,
like,
let's
you're
just
doing
say he'll be
dangerous math.
entering his 50th year.
That's a big one.
Entering.
And just entering.
Well, entering means you're
Oh, he's already
younger.
in. Oh, okay, younger. Okay, gotcha. Got it.
And I may or may not be entering my 60th. So.
You are, Keith Smith. But you're the spirit of a 16-year-old.
Yeah, maybe I'll leave that alone. So, ladies, thank you for doing this. This has always been a lot of fun. So, as Jerry said, we're going to kick off with Arlene. For the 5 or 6 people who do not know Arlene, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Everybody knows you.
About yourself. And
Well, thank you very much. Yes, Arlene Yobs. I am an associate broker with Nest Realty here in Charlottesville. I've been with Nest, this is my 10th year with Nest Realty, but I've been around a little longer than that in this market in Charlottesville, or markets, as we're going to learn today. I started in 1985, and it's been a great career all this time. I'm basically to a point in my career where I do list and sell residential real estate, but I also am involved heavily at CAR, and over the years I'm a past president at CAR from 2018, and I've also been involved on state and national leadership, so really happy to help you all in any way possible, answer questions for you about the market, etc.
She's big time.
Question for you. Have
She's
you
big
also
time.
been in women's council as well? Because I feel
Yes.
like that's where I first met you when I first got into real
Yep.
estate. Yeah.
Yep. In 2009, we chartered that.
So
It's
that's right,
amazing.
because you were part of that initial group, you and Kathy Markwood and
That
a few
year.
others, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Probably
Yeah.
Teely, right?
Yes.
Oh, how
Teely was
cool.
our leader for that.
Yeah,
actually.
oh my gosh. Can I divert the topic really quick? Because you mentioned that you're an associate broker, and I have recently realized that people don't necessarily know what that means, and part of it's because it varies state to state, right? So if you're in Colorado, there are only brokers, but in Virginia, when you first get your initial licensing, you are a licensed real estate salesperson, right? And that is some testing you go through. You have to wait 3 years before you can actually become an associate broker. And you're also held to a higher standard, a higher level of responsibility, right? There's a little less that your principal broker is now responsible for because you are now an associate broker. So you're a responsible woman is what I'm telling the world right now.
Okay.
Wow. Thank you. Well, I would like to think that's the case. Obviously, I have to answer to my broker.
Yes, definitely.
Principal
Yes.
broker always. But I've had a principal broker position role in the past
Oh,
also
wonderful.
at one point.
Been there,
Sales
done that.
management, just a little bit of everything, new construction, resale, predominantly
Nice.
residential. So we'll get to share some war stories.
Ooh,
I can't wait.
love
I know. Love
Are
to
we
hear
gonna do?
that.
Are we gonna do like a Jaws where we start showing scars and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Well, maybe not on that end of it. So part of what we were trying to do here is we're moving into the shift part of the market, right? Real estate is starting to shift a little bit, and what I
See
want.
what you did there.
You like that shift?
I
You
like that.
huh?
It's good.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking snap. I don't know what you were thinking.
Shift is better. Shift is better.
Shift
Yeah.
is better. And then we kind of wanted to, I kind of wanted to throw out there, bringing in the legends, right? And, I've been in it since 87, you've been in it since 85. And we get these questions all the time, are we in a bubble, right? Where's the market going? I mean, it's what we get thrown at us from day to day.
I can't wait to hear her bubble answer.
Well, I mean, we can start there if
We
you
should
want.
start there, yeah.
We start there. We get this question all the time. Arlene, are we in a bubble?
I would say no. I have some data to share with you,
Please.
but also stories. So I'll start out with this one. Everyone is familiar with the last market crisis, right?
Some of us more than others.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, yes.
2006 basically is when we hit the peak of our market prices. Not just here, but nationally. That's a year that is basically the case. But what was happening to us as realtors at the time here locally in Charlottesville is very different because we had a very balanced market at the time. We had lots of listings. We had ready, willing, and able buyers. And in fact, in Charlottesville, we had from the beginning of January to April of 2006, we had 260 some properties sell and close, and the average days on market was 51 in the city of Charlottesville during that period of time. I just had to go in and dig out this number. And so then I took the same time frame this year in Charlottesville from January 1 to where we are right now, April 23rd today. And we had 220 sales, so that is down from 2006. We also have greater population. We have greater demand for these properties. And probably some of you can tell me what the median days on the market has been.
Right now?
Well,
Oh, it's
in the city.
In the city, it's
8?
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I came up with 5.
Okay.
Oh,
So,
yep.
and I was
Not
using a
surprised.
medium number of days on the market. For 2006, it was 51.
Yeah.
But, and even with our average days on the market right now, we're at, 23 in the city.
Yeah.
So it really shows the depletion of homes on the market and that high demand for the homes that are remaining. So the market was very different back then. And we had this was poor timing. And cut me off if you wish.
No.
But-
Please keep going. Please keep going.
But in April, the first 2 weeks of April, Carr decided that we should change our lockbox system. And Keith, you may recall this.
I remember this.
We were basically instructed to not put any new listings on the market for a couple of weeks because what we needed to do was to gather up the old lockboxes from our listings and replace them, turn them into Carr, and then get the new listings and then put them back on the houses.
Okay, when was this?
So April.
of
Not
what
of this year, not of this
No,
year.
but of which year?
2006.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
that particular year.
You got
So-
nervous.
yeah.
You
I
thought
was
you
like-
missed something.
No, I know.
Well, by the way, that's
I
working through
didn't-
the
I
system.
didn't
Because there's
say-
no way Carr would say in the tightest inventory market in a long time to do
Right,
that.
did not list. I was
Yeah,
like,
which was-
I was gonna have a heart
I can
attack.
tell, I can tell you they're looking at new lockboxes right now.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
But
So-
they will roll that out well.
So this was 2006,
Okay.
and we all thought 2 weeks in April? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's going to be bad because the market's so busy right now, and it's this, that, and the other. I had this beautiful listing coming on the market, resale in Forest Lake South in Kendallwood, and we were just sure it was going to sell in a heartbeat. right? Big front porch, gorgeous home, great pictures, if I do say so myself. And when we finally got around to being able to put the new lockbox on, we were all primed and ready, and it was dead. It was like
What just happened?
there weren't calls.
Yeah.
And then we'd check with the other realtors in the area. Are you getting showings on your listings? I know we have new lockboxes. Does everybody know how to use them? But it just changed that very quickly. And it was almost like overnight. It was an overnight kind of thing. And
You're talking about the change in the market.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
That was a relatively fast shift compared to what I think we'll be going through here now. We've been shifting, let's face it, we've been shifting for the last couple of years.
Yes,
And-
absolutely.
And each year is a different turn of the shift. shift. So.
Thank you for working that in.
Oh, that's
Arlene.
totally
so
going to be
good,
the
Arlene.
Thank you for working
You
that in.
started an amazing thing.
well,
Oh,
Keith.
shift.
I
thought it was
trade like
clever.
that.
It's very clever.
I
It's
kind
very
of
clever.
took that to heart. I bought that book in 2009 when Gary Keller.
Show that.
Oh,
Can I?
Do you want
Can
to
I lift
show
it up? Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Here we
Oh,
go.
we have it here.
I shall let you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Please
always.
Get a zoom in on this, Judah.
This is Nikki's copy, but I also have it on my shelf. And there was a quote on the back of it, part of the book, that talks about master the market of the moment. This is ever changing. And as realtors, we have, it's like it's up to us to keep abreast of the market every step of the way. There's
What's-
other
Yes.
factors, obviously, but
What's
that
the
was
market
different.
of the moment?
The market of the moment?
Yeah.
I mean, at the moment?
It's up to realtors to master the market of the moment.
That's exactly-
Master the market of the moment, Keith. What's the
So-
market of the moment?
Yeah, so the mass of the market of the moment, folks ask me all the time, why do we do this show 3 days a week, yada, 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 particularly Mrs. Smith, because it makes me better at being a real estate professional, because I have to look at all this data day in, day out, and the numbers on it. So you were saying that this market changed pretty quickly for you. For me, it was a long, slow slog. I knew it was coming before it came. I was in a different world at that point. I was developing and building, and I tell the story all the time. Back in 2005, when bankers would come into your office and offer you $10 million and pay you to borrow money from them, I knew we were in trouble. But Nikki, why? I know. So part of the excitement about this is we're dinosaurs. Well, we've been around for a while, right? On
Arlene
this
is
side of
timeless. Thank you very much.
Timeless.
Right.
I'm a dinosaur. But so you're not so much, right?
No.
So from your perspective, how does this conversation work
Well,
for you?
I have like almost 5.5 years under my belt, and in that time, I feel like it's felt like about 15 years under my belt. Part of that's COVID
That's
life.
because you've been working with me.
Well, no, not even that. That makes it like 17 and a half. No, it's because I started out as an independent agent. I started out at one brokerage and moved quickly. I dipped out to try out property management for a hot minute. Those numbers didn't work, and if the numbers don't work and there's not hope and ability to grow something, that's never going to work for me, right? So that didn't work out. I popped back in as an independent agent. COVID hit immediately. Like, I was ready to rock that. Once I realized, oh my God, I can actually do this, because year 3, year 4, that's when that usually hits for agents, right? Where they're like, holy crap, oh shift, I can do this, right? I'm just gonna use that to replace any words I shouldn't say. And then I had the opportunity to be TL, right as I was ramping up to
So
Team
what-
leader,
so what's
team
it-
leader.
which is team leader,
Yeah.
which is a role that is a thing at
Well
Keller Williams
suited for you.
Brokerages, which that's what I hear, which is
Yeah.
really great.
Well suited for you.
So it's been an exciting journey, and that's part of why it feels like 15 years though. Like when I go after something, I just don't go lightly. I don't slowly go into a thing. I take time to decide, and then I dive in with everything I've got.
Great.
So this market though, to me, when COVID hit, I was like, okay, so what do I do? I've always enjoyed business. I've always enjoyed troubleshooting things. I like a challenge. To me, that's exciting and fun. And while there's been a lot of negative to that, to me, I've seen people, I've seen humanity step up in a huge way. I saw businesses do things they would have never done before and do it successfully. I saw, oh my gosh, what is the coffee shop over at Ix? Jaybird Supply Company? They started, I want to say in March of 2020.
Oh, no, they started
and do you
in the
know
middle
what
of
they started like right when COVID hit, and you know what they did? They were creative, they were determined, and they have an amazing business that's growing. So to me, that's what all of this shift means is people being inventive and creative. And it is hard, and there are negative sides to it, of course, and we address those on a regular basis. But what I see is the ability of people to change and grow and make things happen no matter what the circumstances. So that's what this shift means to me.
Look at you, huh?
That was excellent.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Her first take was excellent.
So Arlene, 1985, 1987. What's the biggest change that you see in the business today than you did when you first started? What's the number one thing that's different?
Oh, my goodness, there's so many at the top of the list. Marketing-wise, of course, that has entirely changed. We have...
You should tell the story about the book.
That's what I was getting
please do.
Oh, my
You
gosh.
mentioned that in the first time you were on.
And so backtrack another 15 years, 20 years, moved here to Charlottesville in 1982. At that point, I had bought 3 homes, all with interest rates of 7%, 8%, or 9%, somewhere in there.
It's better than your percent, dude.
Yeah. Yes.
And in 1982, bought a home here in Charlottesville that interest rates were basically 18%.
Oh.
That was mine.
Early
I did mine in
18%.
1987. I paid 18%.
Right.
I stand
And-
corrected, I'm sorry.
And hey, guess what? We survived, right? We survived those transactions.
A little bit more
Right,
gray
and
hair,
that's
at least on
why-
my side, anyway.
Why I feel very positive about the moving forward. We can talk about that a little later too, and what the big picture might look like. But we have survived some of those earlier days of the higher interest rates, but at the MLS book level.
This is great.
This is when we moved to Charlottesville, you set up the only way you knew about a house for sale was it was in the newspaper, or there was a sign on the property and you drove by it, and you'd have to call the listing agent if you didn't have a realtor. And we didn't really do that much buyer brokerage at the time. It was all seller agency, right? So we called the realtor. We'd see the house. We didn't take photos of the house because guess what? Cameras, you couldn't even get your photos instantly. In 1982, you had to go send them off and, the little rolls of Kodacolor, Kodachrome, and all that, send them off and that sort of thing. So that's a huge difference. And the MLS book wasn't even shown to us until we went out to tour homes with a realtor, and they would have it in their car and they'd hold it like this because they weren't supposed to show it to you. So if the property wasn't in if it wasn't in the newspaper or you didn't drive by it, you didn't even hardly know about it. Buyers today have so many more tools at their avail by searching online. That is just the huge difference between then and now. And even back in 2006, we didn't have nearly as much on the internet as we do now. There were listings. We were all thrilled when we got the Real Estate Weekly. Do you remember that, Keith?
I do remember that.
Oh my gosh, and that was a weekly paper that Carr
Well, that's back to this
published.
newspaper.
Yeah.
thing.
Didn't you, if my memory is right, didn't you have the first real estate website in Central Virginia?
I did have one of maybe 2 back in mid-1990s, and as far as a real estate agent, there were a couple other realtors and myself who were kind of fighting to be the first out there,
Nice.
have our own real estate website. But the real estate companies were not even in the picture at that point, hardly. So if you happen to have your properties promoted on your website back in the mid-90s, you were much more apt to capture more of the market, and it worked. Definitely worked there for a while. The company started getting into the picture very quickly, and that was good, because then came IDX. Do we know what that is?
Yes, we do.
We do know what
Okay.
IDX.
So,
IDX
so for all of you, it's an internet data exchange, and that's where and most of you probably are familiar with this, but that's the system that allows us to display listings of every other realtor who has their listings published in the MLS, and to basically any of the realtor members or companies who are members of IDX get to display them. So it gives us all so much more information.
Especially
So-
the consumer.
Yeah.
So you're having a conversation with a young buyer, millennial buyer, right? They're going to be 50% of the market. By the end of this year, they're pretty close to it at the moment. They're a little frustrated, to say the least. What's that conversation look like? I'm a millennial buyer. How are you going to help me through this process as somebody who's been through a couple of markets?
You know, I encourage my clients, if they're well qualified, and basically where as professionals we come in is making sure that we have a team. It's not just Nikki, or it's not just me, it's not just you. It's who is our team of experts? Who are our affiliate members, our lenders, our other folks that we work with, attorneys and appraisers and loan, the loan officers, et cetera. Who are these people? And we rely on them to give our clients that expert advice. It doesn't matter whether they're a first-time home buyer, millennial, or retiree. But I do work with a lot of millennials, and one of the things that I try to do is certainly to make sure that they are well educated and they feel informed going into the decision of even wanting to buy a home before we even go out and look at them. But then once we do that, there's the conversation of, well, what can I afford? I know we've talked about this before in many venues, but under $300,000
Impossible.
is kind of a challenge.
Yeah.
But I did actually take a look just over the weekend just to see what we've got right now, and
Under 300.
under 300, and I have a few numbers. Okay, under 300 in the car footprint that's Charlottesville, Albemarle County, surrounding area. There are 62 homes on the market. Now, that is 50 of them are in the outlying counties, so not that many in Charlottesville and Albemarle. And 16 of those are condos and townhouses. So it's a matter of hoping to maybe you want the single-family home, but maybe go for a condo or a townhouse if
That
you
is
can, just to
key.
get into the market.
Yes.
And then in the there's 65 more homes on the market under 300,000 right now that are in Augusta, Stanton, and Waynesboro area.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not a huge number, but there's opportunities to jump into the market under 300,000 if that's in your interest, if that's in your best interest to do so. And I think the condo market is, my gosh, that's one big difference between 2007-8 than today, because in condo market was half of our inventory. Oh, I used the I
2007,
word.
2008, there was
really?
open condos everywhere.
It was
Yeah.
everything.
That was because the lending requirements were pretty much
You
non-existent.
had Barracks
Yes.
West, Hessian Hills,
Oh my
Villas at
gosh.
Southern Ridge, Eagles Landing.
That's right.
And then they all-
of that was
Hessian
newer
Hills.
then,
Yeah.
and there were not the requirements then that there are now.
And that it was part of the kindling that stoked the fire
without a doubt.
of the housing crash.
Yeah.
Wow.
Was the non-warrantable inventory.
Non-warrantable
Yes.
inventory, we talk about it on the show all the time. This could have got a $300,000, $400,000 loan.
Truly.
This couple.
Well, you take the villas where we have a rental. The developer, Mr. Fry, immediately converted from selling his units to renting them during the crash. And the tough part was he owned most of the units,
Yeah.
so he controlled the association. And then that's when the owners that were there who bought in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 were in a really, tough spot.
Hessian Hills, what's the one?
Barracks West?
Barracks West.
Barracks West, but what's the project across on Main Street?
Walker Square?
Walker Square, thank
Square.
you. That all
JPA.
JPA? And that all went from condos to apartments, and
Yes.
then when the market got better, they
Back to condos.
back to condos. But Nikki, I mean,
Yeah.
you help. How many agents are under your wing at the moment?
Like 120.
So
At
how
any
do you
given
have
moment?
this conversation with those 120 agents?
Well, so the way that I have those conversations is a lot of times the way that I'm having it on this show, and truly that what Arlene just said, that whole rethinking that first home purchase, and something just clicked when you were saying it, because one of the things that you all know I'm passionate about is investing, and that conversation has shifted in a very similar way, and I'm realizing they're the same conversation about two different topics, where it's a matter of getting your foot in the door, getting a stability of what your rent is, because when you have that mortgage, yes, taxes can increase and that can affect your mortgage payment, but it's not going to be at that same rate that your rent is going to increase, right? It's also going to be some stability, whatever the market does. If you're renting, the owner of that property can sell that at any point. And that has been happening to a lot of people
It
with
has.
the peak of the market. And it happens at other aspects of the market too, right? It happens when people are wanting to cash out and retire. There are various points. So if the owner of your property is at a point where you feel uncertain, now might be the time to figure out what it takes to buy that home. So when I'm talking to my agents, a huge part of that conversation is really doing a lot of upfront work, doing a lot of consulting on the front end. In the past, we've done a lot of that with our listing clients, but I feel like a lot of the buyer market has been such that oftentimes, like when I came in as a new agent, they taught me, hey, don't just meet somebody at a house. And yet, most everyone did that. Even those who had been around for a long time, even those who were really good agents, it wasn't just a new agent challenge. Now you really should just be having those consults with everyone. If you're not meeting those buyers in an office, going over some really important factors, you're doing each other a disservice. And I know that's hard sometimes because people just want to see a house, but it does the whole community a disservice doing it that way.
So the reason I've kind of came up with this shift. Those of us who've been in the trenches for a good number of years can kind of start seeing this. I was this is somewhat of a quote from Dr. King. The difference between dreaming and visions. Dreaming is you walk around with your eyes closed. Vision, you walk around with your eyes open. You see what's going on. This market is changing, but Arlene, it's not. And I want to kind of drive this point home. It's not blowing up, right? So change is not a bad thing, right? So,
Right. Change is not a bad thing. Earlier this month, I attended the National Association of Realtors legislative meetings in Washington, D.C., and they're held annually. And one of the key things that we all want to do when we attend that is to hear what is new from Dr. Lawrence Yun, who's the chief economist for the National Association of Realtors. And I can remember hearing him last fall at the national meeting, and he's seldom wrong, right? He usually is pretty spot on with his numbers. But when he was talking about interest rates and where they were going, he said, well, they're going up, they're heading up. We might see 5% by the end of 2022. So, of course, he had to kind of come out
Walk that back.
Yeah, walk that back a little bit and talk about some of the things that have happened. And I know I've sent Keith some slides, but there were a few things that are very, very interesting. We can either show them or not. But cash deals are up. That's a huge difference from people have more equity in their homes now. In fact, both the state of Virginia and Charlottesville sort of mimic this same trend. there's been approximately $100,000 worth of additional equity on average in homes in the last 4 years. So if you go from 2018 to 2022, most homeowners that have owned the homes over that time, the trend has been an average of $100,000 increase in value over those 4 years. Now, that's going to vary locality to locality.
Sure.
But that's a lot more money that people have in their, they have more equity and less mortgage than the charts that Dr. Yoon showed how that gap is much bigger now than it was, say, in 2008.
Well,
when there was-
2008, their house was a piggy bank, right? And
Right.
they were flipping them. There was no
Right.
value. There was no skin in the game.
They were HELOCing.
They were
Right.
heel-locking. I mean, we're going to get to
Yes.
asking the question about arms here in a minute. But, you know, they were using their home for
credit card.
as a credit card.
Right.
They weren't using the home as a home.
Correct.
And that's the difference.
Yeah. And new home starts are coming back somewhat from, this is all on a national basis, but new home starts are trending in the right direction, but we still have a long way to go. If we can get more homes built, obviously that's going to increase the number of homes available for people. Mortgage delinquency, foreclosures, and those types of situations are still dropping off, and we may not see as many of those in the future. So the message was good. It was a little frustrating because, of course, interest rates are rising.
That was
and-
also a little out of his control. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh, yeah.
significantly out of his control.
Oh, sure.
But Arlene, again, lessons from the legends. We've been here for a while. This isn't a bad thing, interest rates
No,
going up a little
no.
bit. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. So, yes, and with that, there comes new opportunities because many of the lenders now we're seeing the arms coming back. And so a person buying that $300,000 home, perhaps, first-time home buyer, if they're well qualified, if their credit is good, they can get into a home and they might be fine with an arm. You know, a 5-year might be a little risky, but it depends on their situation. 7-year, 10-year, 5-year arms are still under 4%? Is that right?
Yeah, so 7 and 10,
Yeah.
and I'd love to get Nikki's read on arms coming back in. I have a very different opinion of that, only because of my history on it, but the system is not like it was back in 2006 and 7.
Well, so really this is because of when I came into this market, and my time before this was very much not in this world at all. I'm learning a lot about arms as a general rule. Like when I first came in, no one would have ever brought that up as a conversation point, not even to say don't do it. It just wasn't a thing that came up in conversation 5.5 years ago, right? Or even probably a little bit further back than that. But now it seems like if that gap between that interest rate is large enough, that it might be something worth considering, but you have to be careful and really consider it. I say
Absolutely.
this often, and I'll say it again and again, you have to be strategic about what you're doing. A house purchase is not a small thing, and if you're going to be considering different options for financing, play those out, troubleshoot it, play devil's advocate, do whatever you need to do, and also do that with a professional. Because I've had plenty of clients who have taught me things, right? We each come from our different area of expertise. And also, even when they were able to teach me things, my perspective as the professional who does this day to day was able to add value to what they're doing. There's something to be said about someone who is in this every day, in that market of the moment, knowing what those changes are moment by moment.
Are you advising your clients to refi before the arm balloons? Or is the expectation the house is going to be sold and it's a trade-up transaction?
Arlene?
All the above?
Well, we haven't had those discussions quite yet. In fact, I have not had a buyer. I've been working mostly with buyers this year, but I haven't had a buyer actually. I may have one actually coming up, going the arm way.
So they're starting to creep back in.
They are starting
That
to.
conversation's creeping back in. It's because they're, look, I've been doing this, as long as I've been doing this, most people buy a home by the monthly payment, right? The average
Yes.
person does that. So that's where the ARM can help that. The 7 to 10 year ARM is something that I would encourage my buyers to look at, because per NAR's own stats, people are staying in the homes between 7 and 10 years.
Well, and the expectation is rates are going to drop again.
Expectations are
Once inflation is managed, the expectation is rates will go back down again. So that's the potential with the ARM.
And the longer your ARM period, the more likely you are to be able to
Yes.
make that adjustment. And so, but it depends on each person's situation.
So I've got a 21-year running spreadsheet that I've done for the car footprint. I talk about this all the time, and I do a year over year over year over year on that end of it. And the reason I do that is because I wanted to, the 21 years, is I wanted to include the time of great unpleasantness, as our dear friend Neil Williamson
He's watching. He gives Arlene props.
as he coined it. But I do that so the median number, actually the average, not even the median, the average appreciation year over year is somewhere around 5.5%. So if you stay in it long enough, it's like the stock market, right? It'll catch up with you on the end of it. So, I had this question asked of me yesterday. I was on a bike ride, bumped into somebody, helped sell a house in my neighborhood, who bought their home for $400,000. Their home is worth about $450,000 now, and they're worried about what their house might be worth 5 years from now or 10 years from now, because what they're worried about is, oh my God, is this going to go below 400? And my argument, I said, I'll be right back. I got my spreadsheet and I brought it back and I said, no, if you're going to be in this long enough, it's just the 450 today will increase 3% or 4% or 5%, but it's not going to go backwards, because none of all the systems, I should say, are in place that was not in place in 2006 and 2007. So.
Well, and I think what we're seeing, I know I am at least, I've written more offers than have been accepted this year, probably. We're all in that boat.
You're not alone.
It's not unusual to have clients where we're writing 3 or more offers on a property before we get the home for them. And so what we're seeing is consistently is that if I'm working with someone who's financing, that the offer that was accepted is a cash deal, and or it's waived the home inspection, and or it's got appraisal gap coverage, or it's got, some other things. Just quick and easy, and why wouldn't the seller accept that? And now, so we've all been trying to learn tools that can help us have our clients compete with those cash offers and get to a point where, we're
So
on
what
a
are
level
some of those
playing field.
tools that you employ?
Oh, and it's definitely a challenge, and what I find is that it changes from month to month.
Sure.
I mean, we have really been through a time where in January to now, we were seeing multiple offers, but people were maybe still doing home inspections, and then they weren't doing home inspections, and then they're like, oh gosh, I can throw some money into gap the appraisal, or appraisal gap insurance, which is a sort of a new term out there. And so there's different things going on, and helping the seller to find the offer more appealing by, I had one accepted where the time of the possession for my client, for my buyer,
Seller possession.
wasn't so important, so they were able to give the seller that extra 2 months. Last year, we were able to give them 5 months. So this year, now we're limited to.
We've learned that live, by the
Well, I guess
60 days is the threshold.
way. We learned this live not too long ago.
Although going back to last year, the one that I did last year, that way it was a cash offer, so it really
Didn't
didn't
matter.
matter
Yeah.
anyway.
Didn't matter,
So
yeah.
it's the lenders are requiring that it not be more than 60 days. But that's a big coup. That might make, that
So
might
what,
be a
what-
deciding
so-
factor.
so let's back up for a second. Why is the lenders requiring 60 days take possession?
Because then it turns into an investment property, not primary residence.
Yes.
Why is that?
Yeah,
Why is that,
exactly
Nikki?
what he said. So
So
but
that was
also-
part of the problem in
Yeah.
2006
Yes.
and 2007. I'd sell a house, I'd buy a house from Jerry, right, and I end up not even taking possession of it and flipping for, because it was just going
Wow.
that crazy, and the appraisers were not keeping up, and the appraisal process, everything that we are doing now, if we were doing that in 2004, 5, and 6, we would have never had ever had the.
Well, how about this comment? This is from a millennial. Half the buying population, millennials.
Yes.
The millennial, in particular, the first-time home buyer, has never had a more difficult economic climate to home ownership than right now. And this is a
Very
millennial that's commenting. Danny O'Day, great
Yeah.
insights. So much respect for Arlene and Nikki right now. Still a little bleak, though, to hear the question, quote, for new homeowners, what can they do in Albemarle? And the answer is, move to Stanton. It's not likely you're going to find a home in Albemarle County from a first-time home buyer standpoint.
See, I would say adjust expectations. So if you're trying to get that first home, regardless of being a millennial or not, right? It doesn't matter who you are or what age you are. You really want to reset what it is you want, right? If the goal is to have a home in Albemarle County for whatever reason, what does that look like? What are you willing to do on your wish list and your hit list of must-haves? Where are you willing to give? And view this first house as a stepping stone and not a final destination. Because even for those who tend to buy a home as a final destination, it is rarely actually their final destination. So if you just reset how you view this, view it as an actual investment and as a stepping stone for your future as part of a larger game plan, and you're going to be in a much better place to be able to assess what you want and be able to move forward with something, even in Albemarle County.
I'll piggyback on that too, because, and you're so true. Before I was the age of 40, I had 4 home purchases. Okay, so we understand that millennials and younger people buying their first or even second home who are millennials are having a tough time, and that it is a challenge. But as Nikki said, getting into a home somewhere and capitalizing maybe on this, as we're all pretty much in consensus here that we are not going to have a bubble, that we should continue to see some appreciation. Jump on the bandwagon, get into a home, and if you have to put a little sweat equity into it or do a few things to make it yours, at least you're doing so while the market is still strong. It's not going to drop the way that it did back in the
There's
late
not a
2000s.
single thing we've ever read, see, there's no telltale signs. Again, this is why I want to do lessons from the legends. We all kind of knew what was happening before it happened. Nobody's seeing any of that come. I had the same exact conversation with my daughter and my son-in-law 2 years ago out in Seattle. And I said, buy, no. And I just had a conversation with the other day, oh my God, we should have listened to you, right? Our rent is going through the roof, right? Appreciations. Now, we've been seeing double digits in the last 2 years. I'm going to get this out. That is not normal, right? Just like 3% mortgage is not normal. We're in normal now in the mortgage. We'll be normal in the 3%. I know this much. Your rent's going up, and the rent's going up 100%, and that's, you're building no equity, you're building no capital. Now, if that's not where you're at in your life, you can't do it. But, they're now going to buy a townhome just to get into this ownership ladder and start.
In Seattle?
No, that's a little, we haven't quite got there yet, but he's moving out of Seattle, and we're helping them.
So explain, Arlene, I'll throw this to you. Explain what happens with this phenomenon. The housing values year over year, city of Charlottesville, call it 12%. Central Virginia in that vicinity. Explain what happens when housing values appreciate like they're appreciating now, at the same time that rents are going up as they're going up now, at the same time that inflation, cost of goods, gas, groceries, all are going up at the same time that interest rates are going up at the same time. What does that do to the I don't know, call it Central Virginia demographic or landscape?
It's certainly the biggest challenge that we've had, and anyone buying a home right now has had, because of inflation being where it is, and gas, food, scarcity of items like baby formula, everything. Housing is at the top of that list as far as the inflation list is concerned. So it does make it difficult. I can only tell you that when in 1981, 82, when we bought a home here and the interest rate was 18.5%, we ate a lot of Hamburger Helper. We didn't go to the movies. We didn't, of course, that was like simple entertainment back then, even here in Charlottesville. We didn't have half of what's available today. So it was different times for us, and it was a challenge, but we managed to make that work. I think I was reading over the weekend that for many people, the rent that they're paying on homes is more than half of their household income.
Yeah,
and that's scary. I know it's scary. It's a huge challenge.
So as you know, I sit on a couple of boards and commissions in relation to housing affordability. We are well north of 50% on that end of it, and that doesn't really take into consideration electricity, gas. Well, I mean that's just basic rent, and it's just going to continue to go up, and it's just what we try to explain on the show all the time, and I think everybody's starting to get a grip on it a little bit, is when 2006 and 7 and 8 and 9 happened, we went from 2 million units a year, new construction units a year, literally to zero. And we've now just finally, after 10 years, getting up to this roughly 2 million again where we need to be. We're just not producing enough units to keep up with demand. And, it's Econ 101, and I just don't see it going anywhere. I think what Jerry's is asking is a great question. Where are these millennials going to go? Right? Where is this $200,000 to $300,000 buyer going to go?
I hate to say this.
It's not Lake Monticello anymore.
We're going to have this community where millennials and younger are not going to be able to afford to live here. The working class and blue collar are not going to be able to afford to live here. And they're going to commute to the city in Albemarle County for work, and then commute out of the city in Albemarle County when work is done. And that stinks.
I won't be on the show on Wednesday because I'm going to be giving a talk to the Housing X conference down in North Fork, and that's literally what the conversation is about, is how can we all together solve this crisis. Some people think it's a crisis, some don't. I
think it's a crisis. Chris, and we love Chris Fairchild.
Yep.
He did not call it he said it's not a crisis in Fluvanna County. And that's a Fluvanna County Board of Supervisor saying it is not a crisis for us here.
So the definition of crisis means different things to different people. And so I told a story, and it was true. As I was driving in on Friday's show, I received a phone call from a school teacher in Fluvanna County who was basically
priced out of her community.
Yes.
So she was like, where do I go? Right? I don't know what to do. I have a child. I'm a teacher. I'm going to have to go out of state. I'm going to have to move someplace else. As a Fluvanna citizen, I had a problem with that, frankly, because we're now losing a teacher. Right? So if we can't afford to keep our teachers in our county, how is this going to work, Coach? So this requires all of us at this table, everybody who's watching or listening, to try to figure out how, I won't use crisis. This is a struggle for sure.
It's a crisis?
Yeah, I would say it's a crisis. Would you say it's a crisis?
I would say it's a crisis, and it's not just in our locality, it's so many other areas around the country. Obviously, we are here to talk about the Charlottesville footprint and what we can do to educate consumers and to help them understand the trials and tribulations of this marketplace. And it's hardest of all for the millennials and for the workforce employees of the city of Charlottesville and Albemarle County to stay close into the area. So I think there's one thing I'd like to just touch on, and I don't know that we have at this point, but one of the ways that we purchased our home in 1982, actually sold one in 81 and bought one in 82, but here, there were only 2 houses that we could afford when we moved to Charlottesville from New Jersey. There were only 2.
Oh, hold it. You're from Jersey?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Oh, I think-
Hey, show's over. Only teasing you.
So, the interesting thing is that, I mean, there were certainly homes on the market, but 18.5% interest, it was not feasible. We didn't have that kind of income. I was not even working at the time. So we had 2 homes that had assumable mortgages.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so there are many loans out there that are assumable, but we haven't been needing to talk about that as a possibility up to this point. And then both of the homeowners were willing to do owner financing for a second, because the assumable mortgage, if you take over somebody's mortgage, you might have
There's a
40% or 30% there that you would have to cover, unless the seller can do some owner financing or you can get private money from somewhere. So we had an owner who was moving out, and they were willing to do owner financing for the remaining amount at a lower interest rate, but it was a good investment for them to
Sure.
do that. And I think that we need to start thinking that way a little bit more too. I mean, I think
That would
like-
require the seller to think that way. Because
right?
the seller is bypassing essentially a cash upfront payday to help the next generation of home buyers.
But they couldn't sell their homes back then at 18%. And so
Well-
when I bought
And
in,
now they're going like candy.
Yeah, and I realize that it's different, and that made it tougher for them to sell, and there was incentive there for them to do it. But I think that if we're listing agents on a property, we need to ask our sellers, what kinds of options are you willing to do? A lot of them would love to know that they're helping someone stay in the area. Maybe if half of the property purchasers this year, maybe it's not half, what percentage are cash buyers right now?
oh, not that much.
yeah.
Okay, well,
at least
15,
in,
20%?
I
so-
don't even think it's that high, to be frank with you.
So, but a lot of people have that equity. They
Yeah.
have the equity in their homes from the last 3-4 years. And so if they do sell, they've got the ability to maybe be able to do something, to help.
So I'm glad you mentioned you had some struggles finding something in 82. We had tremendous amount of struggles in 87 to find something to buy. We were millennials at that particular point in time, couldn't find anything, so much so I ended up building my own house because I couldn't find anything to do. It actually was the genesis of starting my development construction company, because we couldn't find anything to buy. Now, keep in mind, rent for like a couple $100s a month, right? Versus
Right.
like
Yeah.
$2,400, $2,500 a month. I'm going to throw this out to 2 of you ladies and let you guys jump in as you see. So I track a week over week car footprint, as we're talking about, and there's some new number that I'm starting to track more than others, and these are price changes. Right? So a month ago,
Pricing down.
Price reduction.
correct.
Yeah.
So a month ago, there was 38. This week, there's 58. So there's 20 new units in a month's time has
good, man.
adjusted
Yeah.
their prices down. Why do we think that's going on, ladies?
Well, so for one, I would like to know more about those 50 some odd units, because I want to know how many of those are really higher end properties.
The market is stabilizing.
Right? So, but that, yes. And also I would like to know if some of these are sellers or realtors who have gone a little above what is actually happening. 'Cause
So
there's
I
always
may or may
those
not have
people,
printed
right?
this all out.
Nice. But there are always those people that are like, oh, I should be able to get this for my house. And if it gets listed, then you're going to end up on that price drop list, and you're going to end up getting less for your home than you could have, because you didn't listen to a trusted advisor who could evaluate the market with you, right? So what do you have? What does that look like?
I would like to hear
Oh,
Arlene's.
sorry, go ahead.
Arlene's
I'm like, I want to
opinion
know
on
the
that.
numbers.
I know you do. These are my numbers.
Yeah, I've actually noticed that, and I didn't track those numbers, so I'm glad you did. But I've noticed it just by looking at the hot sheet each day that we do. That's the first thing we do each morning, it seems, is to look at it and see what are the coming soons, what are the...
Oh, coming soon.
Another whole...
No, we can
another
get
whole
into that if you'd
topic.
like.
But I do think that what we're starting to see is that properties are not... It was so aggressive in the last few months, and agents would put in the notes that once the coming soon was over and it was active, offers to be reviewed on such and such a date, okay, and all these different terms in between for the number of days that they can show the property. And then, oops, we didn't maybe get an offer, okay? So I think that what Nikki just said is true. I think we're starting to see a little bit more. It could just be caution, partly because of the interest rates and what they're doing. But properties maybe they're going to start to not get those 10 offers. Maybe it's going to be 2, or maybe it's going to be none, or maybe you're lucky after a week later and have 1. I had this conversation, actually, with someone recently, and it's hard to think in terms of, you get through the first weekend, do you automatically need to reduce your price on the house? There are some that are maybe doing that because they realize...
So of the 58, so that you know this, the 58, the median days on market to the moment was 24.
Okay.
So when they started hitting 24, that's when they started.
24 is an eternity in this market.
And that's
It's an eternity.
It is.
And that's the point. But this goes
Yeah.
this goes from 70,000 up to 6 million.
I see
Yeah.
24 DOM. I ask, what's the matter with that house?
Right, and so I'm running down here 77,460, all these
Yeah.
12, all these DOMs, and that was my second question. So I'm doing 2 questions here. Is are we starting to see price changes? And I have a very specific opinion on that. But so
It's a reflection of the interest rates.
exactly? So days on market, Arlene, we've been around. What do you think is the magic number where it starts moving?
What's healthy?
Going from a buyer's market to a seller's market or vice versa?
I say you say 50 to 60.
I'm going to say a couple months, somewhere in that vicinity.
Nikki?
And we've got a long way to go with that.
Yeah, long way to go.
Well, and honestly, based on everything that I've read and heard about, we're looking at a couple of more years,
Definitely.
at least, of market changing a little bit, and it might be 5 years before we get to a more balanced, actual balanced market.
Oh boy, should I break out the balance toy?
You can if you want. You still have it?
I don't.
Trey does.
I gave it to Trey.
Yeah,
So
my son has
we had a show where I bought a toy
like a-
balance, and
oh,
I
yes.
had
Quentin.
I think I saw that.
Yeah.
Quentin and Shasha on.
Okay.
And we got yelled at.
No,
by Trey.
no.
I got yelled at because Quentin and I were playing with the toy.
I apologize for chastising you.
No, we needed to do it because we were just playing.
In
and like,
hindsight,
oh.
I was too stern.
I have some props like that. I should have brought them.
Yeah,
We would love to have your
props are good. I normally, we have props, all kinds of stuff over here. But,
So you're basically saying that you don't see this being a balanced market for years.
and I don't disagree with that.
That's what you just said, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to get better than it is
Yes.
right now, but
So-
I don't see
Agreed.
it being
Balanced.
balanced. I think it could be 5 years.
So for viewers and listeners, this is as respected a realtor in Carr, and she just said years, maybe 5 to 6 years before the leverage is not on the side of the sellers. That's what you're saying.
Absolutely. I think we still have a seller's market 2 to 3 years down the road.
Me too.
Well, because we have limited inventory. We have an area where people not only want to move to, but need to move to on a regular basis. We have that economic stability that we've talked about on a lot of these shows.
More students than ever
right?
coming to UVA this fall.
You've got the students.
More
you've
staff than
got-
ever
Yes.
coming this fall.
The
Data
hospital.
science school. Yeah.
So the school is growing, which brings more people, which brings more students, which brings more professors, which brings more staff, and that's just UVA alone, right? We also have NJIC, and we have the JAG school, and we have quite a few tech companies. We've got our own little tech
And
business
they're like
group
between
here.
50 to 100 employees. So
we've
this
got a lot here.
conversation, should I buy now, should I not buy now? The answer clearly is yes, right?
Yes.
Because if you can't get into your perfect home, get into a home, start building up some equity.
Get your foot in the door.
Get the
Truly.
foot in the door. So this, which without my toy that I can't play with anymore, it's a balance, right? So at the moment, some of the sellers are starting to the buyers, I apologize, are starting to kind of not be in the market because they can't be in the market.
Yeah.
We can have a whole show about why
I
and how
know.
we can
Yes.
fix that. But from a current market condition, that's what's changing a little bit, which is starting to bring the balance up this way. But I agree 100%, Arlene. We're not doing this. We're not going from one extreme to another. We're just going to get a little bit more to a balance on it, and get in the market. I think this days on the price changing or on it is the sellers realizing, I went in a little too strong.
I was too aggressive.
Right. I didn't listen to my trusted advisor. The house has been on the market longer than it should have been. It's got a scarlet letter on it. And maybe I should have listened to Arlene and Nikki in the first place. And because price matters, right?
Oh, price,
Yes.
price is key in every aspect.
And why is that? Why does price matter in any market?
And when I say any market, I'm talking about different price points.
Sure.
But you can, if a seller doesn't realistically set the price on their home, it may not sell for what it's listed at.
Sure.
It can still sell for less or take longer to sell, even in this frenzied market, because buyers are more astute than ever before, and why shouldn't they be? We've got a great group of professional realtors in our area. Many realtors are working harder than we've ever worked before.
Yes.
Hopefully, to help our clients become informed and educated. So they've got the tools they need to understand. I do a CMA on every property I write an offer on for my client. And if it's overpriced, I let them know. If I feel like it's overpriced, and if somebody else wants to bid $50K over the price, or somebody else wants to put higher bids on it, that could happen. But I think we're going to start seeing a little less than that. We're going to see maybe some people. There's still going to be multiple offers as long as we have low inventory. And
I think the multiple offers will be very micro location specific. I think that's starting to change a little bit. We had something at Lake Monticello that only had 2 offers on it, and I used the word only, right? 6 years ago, it was like, when are you going to bring me an offer, Arlene? Please bring me an offer, Arlene, on that. But why does price matter to you, Nikki?
Well, so price matters, but also I want to touch on the aspect of multiple offers. We are still in a market where that is the world we're living in.
Yeah.
So I don't want people to misunderstand the conversation we're having now, where we're talking about the possible future as being today, because that may confuse them as to how they should approach what they're doing right now. So we're still in that area where, regardless of where you are, there are very rare instances where it's not a multiple offer situation, right? And as far as that price, you've got 3 things. You've got price, you've got the condition of the home, and you've got the location. Those are the 3 things that matter. And generally speaking, you can't change the location of the home. Yes, you can. We're not going there. That's not a normal situation. So you've got the condition of the home, which is something that there is a lot of control over, but also sometimes to change that takes quite the dump of money depending on the situation. Right now, doing any improvements on a home is really expensive, and it takes a long time to get somebody hired to do it, right? So then the other thing that you have instant control over is that price. And again, I'm coming back to that being strategic. I think you should be strategic about anything and everything you do unless you don't care about it. So if you're going to price your home, being smart about that, realizing that in our current market, you have to price it in such a way that people can bid up. If you price it where you think it's going to bid to, people are going to walk away from that because they think they have to bid. Now that will shift over time, just like we shifted into this. It hasn't always been this way. It will not always be this way, but it is always important to price your house well, regardless of that market and based on the market you're in.
I ran the numbers for Albemarle County of just volume, right? Year over year, from in the first quarter this year versus last year. We're 30% off where we were, just the volume of sales this year, which, I think you're starting to see, that's kind of the beginning of this balance of the scale starting to come back to the other way. But you mentioned you do a CMA on every offer. What other skills, whatever tools that you help guide your buyers through? Do you do CMAs? What else do you do?
Well, certainly we look at the tax assessments, but that can be
Sure.
that can depend on so much on condition, and sometimes there are inaccuracies. If they have a current appraisal, if they have had an appraisal. But those are the main tools. I mean, obviously, it's important to have those conversations with the buyers and to show them the comps that have sold. I try to stay within the same neighborhood if it's in a neighborhood. Sure. If it's a rural property and it's more unique, it becomes a little bit more of a challenge. If it's got acreage, then if it's less than 2, we have these little increments. Let's try to find the properties that are, let's say it's on 1.5 acres, and so you don't want to go over necessarily 2 to 5 acres in looking at the comps, and then it depends on the condition. But those numbers are very important, and also not just even in the neighborhood sometimes, but just what properties have sold in, let's say, Albemarle County or Fluvanna County or Greene County. So, and then it's the terms too of the offer. We talked about price, condition, location, but the terms oftentimes are also important.
So the 5 things I talk all about is location, price, features, condition, and timing. Timing is everything in this business. As you were speaking, I was thinking one of the biggest differences in our industry, in my experience, since 1987 right now, is I have never seen so many outside the area real estate agents in our area. So not only are we working together or competing against our own pool of car agents, we are now dealing with Northern Virginia, Richmond's coming into our sphere. Have you guys seen any of that? And how has that impacted your business?
It does impact. And when I was running the numbers of the listings or the sales that took place this year in the city, many of them were from outside market areas. And so that means we have even less in our car footprint. I took everything that was on the list.
Sure.
And we're also needing to educate those agents who are showing
former
the
president, you're a team leader. I'm on the car board. Let's just have this conversation. To me, I got an issue with that. I know if I want to help Jerry buy something in Old Town Alexandria, I'm going to reach out to Nikki in my sphere.
And I'm going to connect you.
And I'm going to connect you with that, and I'm going to refer you. Because guess what? I'm not an Old Town expert.
Can I give you a real example?
There's a couple bars in there that I'm really expert at.
That's different, though. Yes.
Who would crack the whip on that?
Well,
that's a great question.
That's a really good question. Can I tell you, though, a real-life example? One of my agents recently, it was this year sometime, had a situation where one of those buyers, and I think we all have those buyers, that it's like, oh, I really want to help you get a house. Your chances are probably not as high as I'd like them to be, and let's go for it. But because there was a listing, and I think it was at Lake Monticello, if not, it was Fluvanna, where it wasn't in our MLS at all.
Oh, yeah.
It was an out-of-area agent who didn't even have it in our MLS, and that was the reason that this agent, one of my agents, was able to get their client under contract, which was great for their agent, but not great for the market, not great for that seller.
So let's put a verbal picture to that. So what's happening, this coming soon thing, right, is now we have agents outside of car who's not belonging to car putting a sign up, who's kind of getting an advantage, in my opinion, to it. To answer Jerry's question, I'm not... To me, I've always thought it was an ethics thing. You're supposed to be an expert in your region, and if I'm not an expert in my region, I reach out to Arlene. I'm not an expert in something.
But the agents are getting, because inventory is so tight.
They're just desperate.
They're getting desperate. Yeah. And their sales footprint is having to expand for them to
Yeah.
pay the bills and make an income.
I don't
Okay.
know, I don't know how one addressed that. I'm sorry, Arlene, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that I see mistakes in those listings all the
Sure.
time, too.
Sure.
So, in other words, there was one that was in Albemarle County, but it was listed as being in Charlottesville because probably the agent from Northern
know the
Virginia
difference.
didn't really understand that, yes, we have the area of Charlottesville, but it might have a Charlottesville mailing address,
Right.
but it was not located in the
In
city.
Charlottesville.
Yeah.
And the property was on the market for a couple of weeks. I mean,
That's a long time in this market.
and you know why, probably,
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't getting the attention from the local realtors.
So they use different contracts.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a thing, and I
Well,
just
and
don't
I
know.
I do request that the offers be written on.
Bravo.
They need to
Good
be.
for
Well, if
you.
it's not a
VAR.
market agent, they need to
Yeah.
use card contracts.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Well,
Good
we
for
use
you.
the standard Virginia
The VAR.
state. We actually
Yeah.
cannot
Yeah.
use other area contracts if we're not in their MLS.
Right.
Per their own MLS rules. And I will say that this aspect, this creep of agent area in which they're willing to work, even if it's not an area they know well, is an indication of the stress of this market that is also putting on realtors, right? And I think
It
this is one of those things where you have to be careful. Yes, we work hard, but you have to make sure in this kind of market that you're working smarter and not harder in that way.
Well, follow-up question for you guys, and I'm really curious of Arlene's take on this, because I know your take on this. Do you think, and Neil Williamson says this, Free Enterprise Forum, there's a lot of comments we haven't gotten to, but he says, absent a solution to the housing crisis, this community may become a place for undergrads, newlyweds, and nearly deads.
Ooh.
Neil Williamson, always got the turn of phrase, Neil Williamson right there.
ooh.
Here's the question that I have for you. The inventory is not going to get looser, and it's going to stay pretty darn tight. Are you going to see agents, realtors leave the profession?
If someone had told me 10 years ago that we'd have this kind of market today and asked me if I would still be in the business if we were dealing with multiple offers at 50 and 75K over list price, I would have said absolutely not. And yet here I am. You know, so
That's
but
because you're a legend.
Exactly.
And you're good at your job.
Thank you. But I don't know that we'll see that many leave the industry.
Really? You think they'll stay?
There's a large percentage that are not in the business, but they have a license.
They're hobbyist agents.
Yes, and that's
Hobbyist
different.
agents.
Most
Yeah.
definitely.
So I don't know that the numbers will change all that much. We had a lot more realtors back during the last crisis than we do
2008?
now.
Really?
Oh,
A
yeah,
lot more
sure.
than?
We did.
Oh.
But we were not.
Over 1,500 in car?
I think it was like 1,200 agents at that, 1,200, 1,300
So we're
agents.
about in the same. Okay.
No, I think
Do we not
we're about
have that right now?
1,000, 1,100, something like that.
We've
Because
dropped a little.
well, it's we
The Woody Fitcham is a good example.
that correct. Thank you, Woody
Got it.
Fitcham, the
Oh, yeah.
associate. Thank you for
Oh,
saving
okay.
me on this
That's
end of
good.
it.
Yeah.
Look, the bar is pretty low to get in.
Mm-hmm.
The bar is really high to do business from 1982 to today and do it successfully.
Yeah.
So clearly, you know where the high bar is. So my hat's off to you.
She's the
Kudos.
pros pro.
She's
the pros pro. Everyone is saying that on the feed here. Daniel McDougall is a mortgage officer. He says when the license renewal comes, watch and see. You will see a lot of agents get out.
Well, and I think
the
a lot of
license
people
renewal
are
comes.
really struggling.
So the license renewal is not the big number, right? That's a pretty easy number. It's what it is to be a member of CAR and a member of NAR. That's the big dollar amount and the money that it costs to have your lock boxes and so forth and so on. That's the number. The renewal's $100 or something like that. That's not a big to do.
I think what he's saying though is that when people's
Sure.
time, that's when we're going to see it drop, and it's not a set time. Those are happening every month as we go along.
Arlene, what's the national average gross commission for real estate agents?
Oh, goodness.
About $34,000.
I was going to say in the 30s somewhere.
$34,000.
That has not changed a lot over
That
the
has not.
last 10 years.
Now, that's a
And
little.
you would think that it would go up, but it,
And the reason it
So-
is so many of them only do like one transaction
Yeah.
or zero transactions.
Right.
So that skews the number down. But
Yeah.
I think, we have a policy in our little corner of the world, in our little company, that if, you're not going up to Northern Virginia to do a deal, we're referring it out to somebody. That's just, if it's not within our footprint and your
Totally agree.
expertise on that, that's what you're going to do, because, you let the professional in that area take care of your client. Now, you
and time
manage
is
it.
money.
Yeah,
It
right.
is. Well, and the fuel that you're going to put into it and the extra time that you have to put in because you
Yes.
don't know the areas well, you're probably going to lose out more often because you don't know what they're looking for.
So I just looked at the watch for the first time. We are at
Yeah, we
You
are.
guys have
we're at 11:30. So thank you. I told Arlene that we would keep her concise and to the point on the time.
You're fantastic, Arlene.
Oh, thank
seriously.
you. Thank you.
So please share some pearls of wisdom for us here that we can learn from.
Well, I would just like to, there's one topic that I'd like to talk about briefly, and that is homeownership. Homes, if you are a homeowner, and we all have been challenged over the last couple of years with having maintenance done on our homes that's needed, roof work, HVAC, yeah, it's really hard to get the contractors in, but it was impossible to do so to a large degree during the whole pandemic time period because we didn't really want people in our homes, right? So we didn't have anything unnecessary done. I would say to you that if you're a homeowner and you have not looked at your roof or had your roof inspected in the last 10 years or your HVAC system looked at, I would highly recommend getting some opinions, having work maintenance done on them now. And the reason is it's going to take you probably 90 days to get a contractor to the house. And the other part of that equation is you may not think you're ready to sell your house right now, but that could change next week or early next year. And you want to be ready and you want to be poised to be in a position where you can put your home on the market and have these things taken care of ahead of time. I have had two situations this year alone with buyers where one of them waived the home inspection entirely, and so we thought the seller thought everything's good to go, we're all taken care of, buyer's going to closing, and their insurance company for the house came by to said, oh, well, that roof is 20 years old, over 20 years old. We need to have somebody come out and inspect it, a local roofing contractor. And trying to get someone out to do it on the fly like that is really next to impossible. And they wanted that verification that the roof was okay before they would insure the house. So you think you've got your loan approval, you've got your appraisal, you waived the home inspection, and then you have that. So that was one situation. The other was also with a roof, and the folks were not fine. We're financing also, but they had a home inspection. We had a home inspection contingency in that one.
Pass fail?
And it was a pass-fail. It was basically for informational purposes only. And it did bring up a little bit of issues with the roof over the garage part of the house. It was an on-grade garage. But my client said, oh, that's not a big deal. I can get it done afterwards, after closing. Well, the
Impossible.
same thing happened, and their first we went through 3 insurance companies before they got the insurance on the house. And they did have the work done after closing, but it's just these things that it's just a good opportunity now as we're coming out of, sort of the pandemic, try to grab some contractors. And I know it's been tough because we had the storms in January, the ice storms and everything else, and we're still recovering from that.
So,
And
so
roofers-
there's a reason, Arlene, I've changed the show topic title to O Shift, right? And this is what you're saying is super important. I work mostly with buyers. Yona does a lot of listings on it. I have multiple buyers right now that are not making offers on homes because it needs to know. So everybody knows
Yeah.
I'm a recovering developer and builder. I know what a roof looks like and what it shouldn't look like as far as age
I
goes.
mean, you can eye test a 20-year roof.
Very easy, very
Yeah.
easy. And they're not making their offers. They're saying, look, I'm not going to do a competitive bid on this and overpay it, knowing that in a couple of years, I got to put 12, 15, 30 grand, or whatever the number is, into the house. So this is why this shift, this is why this balance is happening. If you're going to put your house on the market, yes, getting somebody out's impossible. But you should try. ISC, there's a perfect interstate service company, one of our sponsors for the show. Hey, you
Very
like that,
well
huh?
done.
Hey, you like
That's
that,
so
huh?
good.
You like that, huh?
So proud of
Yes.
you.
Yeah, thank you. Look at this. The coffee kicked in. And maybe what I have in the coffee that kicked in. But anyway, so get folks out there because it's important. Buyers are starting that shift. Buyers, it's not that they're not out there in great numbers. They are, but they're starting to scratch their head and go, do I really want to spend $50,000 more on a house and have to do this on the end of it? So as sellers, this is important. Now's the time to start thinking like this. So thank you for bringing that
Well,
up.
and that's happening more and more, that exact challenge with
Yeah.
roofs and insurance. And insurance companies have been paying out for roofs, especially recently, especially with the ice storms.
Yeah.
And a lot of these situations, it's people who recently bought homes where we've had these pass-fail inspections, or maybe it was a full-blown inspection, and yet they're in this house and now they've got home insurance. And so insurance companies are starting to say, whoa, hold up. You know what? Let's not go there. So we're definitely getting a little bit
So
of
we're
pushback.
starting to have some pass and fails in the recent weeks that are now turning into home inspections, full home inspections.
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely. So there's the M word gets found. There's a structural problem on it,
Oh, the M word.
and we're like, okay, time out. We're either out of the deal or we're gonna fix this,
Yes.
right? So you're starting see that creep back into the market again. The market is shifting. It's not exploding. It's just shifting.
Yeah.
We'll close with this. Daniel McDougall. Arlene is one of the best. I've been fortunate to have worked with her many times, and the transactions run very smoothly when Arlene is at the table.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dan.
You are awesome.
Well, thank you.
Seriously,
Thank
you are amazing in the talk show setting. Amazing in general, which is great in the talk show setting.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. Real Talk on a Monday, presented by Keller Williams Alliance and Yes Realty Partners. Real Talk with Keith Smith.
That's right.
Online.
Online on a website somewhere, right there. There it is.
RealTalkWithKeithSmith.com. All the shows archived there. Nikki Chambliss, job well done.
As
We didn't
always.
get a chance to talk about our deal last
Oh, I know.
year.
We did a deal together where we
Oh,
had
yeah.
challenges, and it worked because we worked together to make it happen, and
Yes.
everyone was happy, and it was
Nikki was
really
real pro.
It was all sorts of challenging, and we pulled it off. It was a
I
miracle.
could not think of a better way to end the show. That's what makes this business
Yeah.
work.
It really
Yes,
does,
it
and I
is.
didn't want to leave the show without making
thank
that
you.
point.
Like, we
because
even
you did
had
a
the buyer
super job.
change to another, the contract
Oh,
was
yeah. Oh, my gosh.
assumed by
And that
another
was what,
buyer.
last year? Mm-hmm. Wow.
Oh, wow. Liza the dog
Hey,
escaped.
Liza's like,
Why don't we
show's
go to
over.
the studio cam so people can see Liza? This is the I Love Single
Oh.
mascot, a rescue from Caring for Creatures.
So can I share a thing since we're
Please.
still talking and seeing Liza? So really, like we're talking about this O shift, right? And we talked about this book.
We got
And
an
there
image
are
for that, don't
so one of the go-to books, no matter what brokerage you're with, is The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. It's a blueprint. It is timeless, right? But what this is, the shift book, it is timely. So it is the time where something like this is from the previous shift, right? This is going to reference what was happening in 2008, 2009, 2010, which is not the same thing, but also the basics that you go back to are the same. So while the market is different, this is still going to be the thing that helps you say, oh, okay, this is where I need to focus on.
So we're going to, over the next couple of months, bring lessons from the legends and O shift, right? Because what's old is new again. So
Yes.
some of these old skills have to be brushed off because it'll balance, and then we'll be in the shift. But I thought O shift was a good play on words.
I thought it was
Good.
great.
It
It's
was.
great.
It was.
And
Have to be-
lessons from the legends. That's
Lessons
great
from
too.
the legend. I have to be careful with the O shift because the Brooklyn in me might change it to something else.
You handled it well.
What part of Jersey?
South Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You know why New York is
South of Philly.
Oh, well, Philly's one of my favorite cities. You know why Manhattanites are so depressed all the time, right?
Tell us.
Because the light at the end of the tunnel is Jersey. Sorry. I have to give you a little
Well,
something.
you know, notice I
Pete
didn't
Smith
say,
ends it on
notice I didn't say which exit on the turnpike I'm
That's
from.
right, that's right.
That's what
Yeah.
everybody asks. Thank you,
Thank you,
Keith.
thank you for doing this
Thank
so
you,
much.
Jerry.
Oh,
It was fun.
absolutely. You were
It was
great.
fun.
You know I
Nikki-
love you, so thank you.
We love everybody here. Keith, Nikki, Arlene, Judah. My name is Jerry, and this is Real Talk with Keith Smith. Thank you kindly for joining us, guys. You enjoy your morning. Take care.
Couldn't
Awesome.
pass up a
That was
joke like
great.
that.
Very well done.